Welcome back, folks, to this month's WP-Tonic WordPress and Tech Roundtable show. We've got some great stories to discuss. We've got a great panel. Unfortunately, Jeff Chandler had to not be with us. He's seemed to have a terrible cold. So I released him from his duty. And Heather's sunning herself somewhere. So she won't be joining us. But we've got a great panel. We're going to be discussing Google. We're going to be discussing the state of the word from the great leader. We're going to be discussing WP water cooler again. And we're going to be discussing Marc Andreessen and the enemy, whoever is the enemy, I do not know. So we've got some great stories. I'm going to let the panel introduce them. We've got a great special guest. We've got Lee Blue with us. So Lee, would you like to quickly introduce yourself?
Sure, yeah, I'm Lee Blue. I've been using WordPress for a really long time. So I don't know, maybe 15 years ago, I put a WordPress e-commerce plugin together called Cart66. And that went great for about 12 years. And the past 5 years, I've been doing a lot of business coaching with web designers over at lee.blue, if you want to find me over there.
That's great. I've got the goat of WordPress. I've got Spencer. So Spencer, would you like to introduce yourself?
First of all, I'm very happy to meet Lee because I've known your name, but of all the people, I see you're 15 and raise you 3 more. As long as I've been in WordPress, I've seen your name around, and I'm glad to finally meet you. Plus, I like the metaphor because if you were Lee Red or Lee Yellow, or you at least have the matching blue behind you, so it's catching. Yeah. This is Spence, master of trivial knowledge of things people don't care about, from WPLaunchify.com, and a continuing thorn in Jonathan Denwood's paw, but that's why he loves me.
I know my place. I'm just a donkey. So there we go. Got my friend Chris Badgett from Lifter LMS. Would you like to introduce yourself, Chris?
Hey, Jonathan, and nice to meet you, Lee. I'm Chris from Lifter LMS. It's a learning management system for WordPress. And I have a podcast for course creators and WordPress pros called LMS Cast.
And you got a new dog on your team. Are you training him right now?
Oh, so cute. Your puppy's so cute.
Yeah, she's a border collie. She actually just left the office, but she's been amazing so far. Just got her down in Pennsylvania when I was visiting my business partners.
All right. How's the e-learning going with her?
She's not that much into online education, but I will say the way border collies, they key in on people. I find that she likes to watch movies, and there's just a lot of eye contact going on. It's a pretty cool breed.
All right, there we go. I've got my normal co-host for the other WP-Tonic shows. Kurt, would you like to introduce yourself to the listeners and viewers?
Yeah, sometimes I think I'm just the mouse that takes the Spencer thorn out of Denwood's paw.
That would be true.
So I own Mañana No Mas. It's an agency that focuses largely on membership and learning sites, and I run the Mañana No Mas podcast. And I too am blown away by Lee's background. I'm looking at the screen and I'm thinking I've got to do a lot of work on my background if I'm going to keep doing this thing.
It is very impressive, isn't it? There we go. All right, before we go into the meat and potatoes of this great show, we've got a couple of messages from our major sponsors. We'll be back in a few moments.
This podcast episode is brought to you by Lifter LMS, the leading learning management system solution for WordPress. If you or your client are creating any kind of online course, training-based membership website, or any type of e-learning project, Lifter LMS is the most secure, stable, well-supported solution on the market. Go to lifterlms.com and save 20% at checkout with coupon code podcast20. That's podcast20. Enjoy the rest of your show.
Folks, I want to point out we got some great special offers from the major sponsors, plus a curated list of the best WordPress plugins to help you build fabulous websites for your clients. You can find all these goodies by going over to wp-tonic.com/deals, wp-tonic.com/deals, and you find all the goodies there. What more could you ask for? Probably a lot, but that's all you're going to get from that particular.
$5. That's what I would ask for.
What was that?
$5.
$5 about what?
You said what else would I ask for? That would be it.
Oh, that's cheap from you. Right, there we go. So off we go into the stories. Well, I've started off with the State of the Word 2023 that will be broadcast live from Madrid, December the 11th. I really don't know why this is still happening, apart from it's a jolly to Madrid. What do you reckon, Chris? I think they used to have it just before WordCamp USA, didn't they? I could understand. I don't understand the purpose of this anymore. What do you think, Chris?
I was actually reminiscing the other day with somebody how I missed it being a big part of WordCamp US. It was kind of like the keynote at the end of the event, right before the after party, and it had it's a big leadership opportunity. I remember when Matt did a presentation on Gutenberg, and I believe we were in Nashville at the time, and I thought it was a great, state of the word kind of presentation. And I'm not sure I understand the full logic to removing it to a separate thing. At the recent WordCamp US, what's filled its place is more of a Q&A, which is also valuable. It's sort of like what used to happen at the State of the Word at the end when the audience would come up with questions. Now that whole segment is that. So I don't really understand the logic behind like moving it out, or at least moving it around. I would rather see it move around the big events from like US to Europe to Asia when all those people are together. I do like the fact that they're doing it in Madrid. I think that it's important to move things around. Like I'd love to see WordCamp US happen in Mexico City or Vancouver, Canada, and just keep mixing it up because WordPress really is a global audience, and just kind of especially get more people involved in different countries in those regions. But yeah, that's all I got to say about that.
So what do you reckon, Kurt? It doesn't make a lot of sense to me at the present moment. Why have it there now?
I reckon Badgett is a genius, because if we could rally to have State of the Word and WordCamp US delivered from Vancouver, that would put us really, really close to some awesome mountain biking. So I'm totally down for WordCamp US going to Canada. Totally down. Honestly, I don't care where the State of the Word comes from. And maybe I'm just so new to the overall, overarching community aspect of being involved at this level. But the guy makes a statement, they broadcast it live, we can all see it. I really don't care where it comes from, because we're all embracing this work remote and, don't do the back to the office thing. And it is what it is. The guy can talk from wherever he wants. We can see it. We get the message. And from that, I just want to really campaign for this Canadian WordCamp thing. I think we can do that. I want to go mountain biking again at Whistler.
Oh, there you go. So Lee, well, he used to like what Chris said. He used to have this speech during WordCamp USA, or I don't know why he couldn't make this speech at WordCamp Europe, or I have no idea why it's become a separate event. So I differ to Kirk. I don't really follow the logic. You got any thoughts about this, Lee?
It's kind of cool that they've got, I think the more stuff, the more events that are out there, the more we can talk about it. And, it gives us two chances to talk about WordPress instead of just one, which is kind of cool. I'd love to see the WordCamp start back up a little bit more. Like I used to go to a bunch of WordCamps, before the pandemic and everything, and then they sort of died off. And I'd love to see the WordCamps come back a little bit more. What do you guys think about that?
Did you go to Maryland? I don't remember seeing you.
I've been to, I went to one in Baltimore maybe twice.
No, I mean the big one. When we were just there a couple months ago.
I haven't been since the pandemic.
Oh, okay. I would have remembered meeting you.
Well, thank you. That's
Yeah.
cool. I would hopefully remember
it
meeting
was
you too.
it was large but surprisingly small at the same time, because there was like tens of thousands of people, but managed to bump into almost everybody.
Yeah.
I just love going. I made so many friends. I go to the one down in Raleigh. There used to be one in Raleigh a lot that I would go to, and met so many people that I liked there. And I've even presented there a couple of times. And I just miss, I kind of miss my friends. Just miss seeing people.
So, Spencer, what's your position on this?
Well, I think Chris really said it well. And international destinations, especially that have nice scenic opportunities, and Kurt's comment, biking or skiing would be awesome as well. Yeah, I'm all for it. I don't have any grudge with Matt that I have to say beyond what I say in Twitter all day long. But like, what I do feel happens quite often, especially with the development cycle and some of the politics and some of the rest, is it seems rather happenstance the way that this whole setup is working now, 18, 19 years later, versus a company that's running half the internet you think would have more of a structure similar to every year these things happen in these ways with these people, just like development. But you can see on a daily basis that it's clearly being run like, I don't know, like a High School Musical, like a high school Glee Club, like a high school what do you call that, student body government. It's just, there's no level of high professional organization. And I think that it's long overdue, because quite frankly, we really demand or command a lot of space in the internet. And yet we're still being run like this sort of pseudo weird, benevolent, sort of malevolent dictatorship. I'll tell you what I want to tell you. It's going to do this. Like, there's just so much uncertainty. So I'm not dramatic here. I could care less where it comes from, like Kurt said. But it just seems, when I have to explain to other people how we do stuff, that I'm apologetic more than I am proud, at least in terms of the actual way it's run.
You get used to it, Spencer. I've had to apologize.
I've had to pass that conversation, aren't we? I mean, like the uncle who happens to have started $1 billion company but has a little drinking problem or something. Like, he sits at all the family events, but you can't deny the success that he's got, but you have to explain he's not really angry. He's just had a couple too many.
Yeah, like I was saying, apologising. I've got used to it because I've had to apologise about myself all my life. So, so there we go. But yeah, I do see where you're coming from. It has, if I was in Matt's shoes, going off to Madrid and doing a little speech, it sounds pretty cool. It's got a bit like it was done at the last minute, and all his buddies, all the chosen, can go to Madrid and listen to the wise leader, and they have a bit of a party, won't they? So
maybe Tim Ferriss will be there. And
yeah, I'm sure he will be, the Penguin Man. I call him the Penguin Man, Lee, because he had an interview with the great leader in Antarctica a few months ago. Like you do, Lee, go off to some godforsaken spot to do a podcast, There we go. Let's go on to another story. Things are getting hot for Google. The Justice Department don't seem to think they do evil. So Lee, what was your views on this?
Man, I had a lot of thoughts about this because I run a lot of ads for myself and for my clients, and a lot of them are on the Google platform, sometimes on the Meta platform, but we've mostly shifted entirely over to Google. And it was really eye-opening because I hadn't been following the legal case. I didn't realize the thing about them kind of shifting the prices of the ads to meet quotas and stuff like that. So that was kind of crazy. But the biggest thing that really stood out to me was Google buying default search engine positions on Apple devices. And it's like, I don't know about that. That's I really don't feel like you ought to sell default settings. I feel like if it was me, and it's obviously not me, I'm not Apple, but if it were me, I would want the device people, like the Apple people, to be able to pick whatever default settings they want. Yeah, I kind of think about it in like 3 levels. Like, one level is it's default. That's the highest one. The medium level would be some kind of like a settings thing where like as you're setting up your phone or whatever, you can pick which one you want and just like a one-click pick kind of a thing. And then like the third level is you just go into the settings and just change to whatever you want. So I don't think there's any issues with like being on the one-click pick settings page. Like maybe you could sell access to that. Whereas, but like selling the default position, it seems like it's really monopolistic, and I don't really like that vibe too much.
Oh, Google, monolithic, never. Kurt, what did you?
You're just picking on me, Jonathan, because you know I'm going to come at this different.
Well, that's why you're here. You know, I don't choose people that just going to agree with me. You're supposed to have a conversation. I know that's old fashioned, and everybody just wants a load of people that agree with themselves. There we go.
This topic's hard for me because I don't like Google as a company. I don't like it's. I'm not a fan of Google, but selling the default position on the iPhone, for example. That to me is no different than product placement to have a can of Coke on the dining room table in a movie. You know, it's corporations constantly pay to market to us in our eyes, and they force it down our throats. And as I read the article that we're discussing, I couldn't help but get that crabs in a bucket sensation. Like, you know, they're climbing to the top of the bucket, and all the smaller companies are grabbing them and going, "That's not fair. That's not fair. Come back down to our level." And it's not fair, right? But then so many things in our world aren't fair. Like if I started a car company today and then wanted to sue, I don't know, Hertz Rental Car because they still ordered more Fords for their fleet than Von Annens for their fleet, I would say, well, it's not fair. I should be able to sell as many cars as Ford. But Ford's been established. So I have a really hard time when people have discussions in business about what's fair and what's not. And yeah, did they use inside knowledge to kind of, you know, rally their purpose? I'm sure they did. But the people that are going to make the call on this are also the same people that invest in all kinds of stocks that you and I wouldn't be allowed to invest in to better their bank accounts. So I don't see how this is going to be solved.
Yeah. So Spencer, what do you think all this is about? Because I was really surprised that the Justice Department has gone down. I thought they would never go down this route because I just thought Google was untouchable. So what do you think all this is about, really?
It reminds me of sometimes on the internet I'll see these images that are clickbaity, but it shows an old lion that's all skinny and frail, and then it shows the hyenas and the jackals and the vultures all circling around. And
that's how I feel, Spencer.
That's how I feel most mornings. It shows that and has like the tone that even the proud king of the jungle, when he starts to show vulnerability and weakness, becomes essentially outcast from the tribe. And then the jackals and the hyenas and the vultures start circling, waiting for him to go down, and that's it. And I think we all know that Schadenfreude is probably the number one thing that especially us westernized capitalists or Americans love. We love the Schadenfreude. The big game, you know, leader goes down hard. You know, we elevate our heroes and then we crush them. Well, I think AI has revealed the soft underbelly of Google and its incredible monopoly. And there's some young guns over at the Justice Department who've decided, I'm smelling a kill. And now is the time to go for it, because before, the entire internet would have suffered if Google went down hard. But now AI has revealed, hey, you know what? I think we can do just fine without Google, because AI and Bing search and all these other things now are showing promise. That's what I think's underneath all this. And you can look at examples in past shows. Here, remember when I argued with Rand Fishkin about how SEO is a bunch of bullshit and AMP is bullshit and all the other things bullshit? And Rand was like, I don't understand you, Spence. You're crazy. Well, he went off and started a new company that basically he talks all day long about how Google's full of shit. And that's the point. Google's been full of shit forever, making us all bow to the altar of what they tell us to do while constantly changing their mind. So if I was in the Justice Department, I would go for them too. Let's take them down a notch, because if it extends into the actual mechanics of devices, whatever. Now, I'll extend this into WordPress gratuitously, because I was working with a client this morning, and it seems that the chocolate factory has grown an even bigger set of cojones, because one of their plugins, Insights, has 12 links in the menu. 7 of them are upsells for their other products.
Only 7? I'm surprised it was only 7. I'm surprised it was only 7.
I'm saying it's exactly the same behavior. Google thinks they can get away with murder. The chocolate factory thinks they can get away with murder. And if we're really looking at who's going to monitor it, it's either got to be regulation, or it's got to be the user base or the peers. We're all basically deciding what kind of world we want to live in. And if all of us are driving on the right side of the road, but the big monster thinks they can come in and go on any direction they want, all the rest of us will suffer. So again, I'm not a communist, I'm a capitalist, but I'm saying capitalism requires that we have rules that we all abide by. Otherwise, the game isn't fun to play, just like Monopoly. And that's it. That's what's happening in my view.
And that's all I got to say about that.
All right. So, Chris, I think it would be beneficial for Google and for the shareholders that it was broken up. I think more revenue would go to the shareholders if it was split up. And I actually think the search part should be like Mozilla in a foundation. I don't think it should be controlled by the government, but it should be a non-profit foundation, and the rest of it can be commercial businesses, and I think it would generate more income for the shareholders. I think that would be the best solution for this situation. But that's just my opinion. What do you think, Chris?
I think it's complicated, and really it's up to the technology companies to innovate. We haven't had a major, breakup of a conglomerate in a long time in the US, to my knowledge. And why hasn't DuckDuckGo, emerged as a superior solution? I think it is good that like ChatGPT and Microsoft is pushing ahead with their AI products, is somewhat disruptive to Google's pole position. But it's really just a balance of free market economics. I like to believe that the users of these products are going to ultimately make the decision. I personally choose Google search and I use Google Chrome for my browser because for me, it's the best solution. If my iPhone came with Safari as the default browser, I would change it to Chrome. Yeah. So I believe the users are not, have the intelligence to figure it out themselves. Paying for premium placement, I agree with Kurt, is really just kind of business as is in terms of product placement. But I would like to see more disruption in the space. And I think that's the ultimate issue is, can a small company actually enter today and compete on search? Is that even possible? And if it's not, there might be an issue there.
Okay. All right. Right, on to the next one. I was into, but right. We've had another episode from the water cooler. Sorry, seems still to be really upset. So Spencer, I was in two minds, but we, in some ways, I'm glad that this particular part of WP-Tonic has become monthly, because I was getting a bit bored because we were having a groundhog episode, almost every episode, Spencer. We were discussing the same thing, and I just don't fundamentally see anything really changing in the near. So what was your response to this episode from the WP water cooler?
I mean, the primary topic was like the governance thing. And am I saying her name right when I say Say?
I say Sarah, but you're
Say
probably
Reed.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this came a little later than the drama that led to her Twitter collision on the highway, hijacking, whatever. But essentially, for those who don't know, she's a a very intelligent person who's been a very, I think, well-known and respected contributor to the WordPress community and all of the things on the back end. And Matt woke up and didn't have his meds and decided to not only attack her, but like go after her in a, what I would suggest would be an out of balance at best, maybe even misogynistic way. It was unusually cruel for no good reason. And then he went on a rampage with a bunch of other people who he felt he could judge the level of their contribution to the community individually, which again, I go back to the whole idea. We see this with billionaires. Matt may or may not have $1 billion, but he's definitely exemplifying the magnification behavior that we see of human beings who have a lot of money, where whatever it is about that relationship of money or power or exposure, their worst and best behaviors become magnified. And his attack on her was the worst of human behaviors, but more importantly, it, you know, as I keep saying, pulled back the curtain on the Wizard of Oz, where he gives one persona in public, but we've all seen historically before he was Matt Mullenweg, the Wizard of Oz, his real nature is like a regular Joe. Like he used to go at people's throats if he didn't like what they said. Well, that's always been him. He's just been pretending to be this other guy. And this unfortunately revealed it for the rest of us. So my takeaway then, my takeaway now, my takeaway that I said even at the beginning of the show is we, the makers, the people who really truly have created WordPress over all these years, we own WordPress, not Matt Mullenweg. And they have set up essentially two columns. We have set up two, hold on. We've set up two columns, the WordPress.org, and then there's .com and Automatic. And as far as I'm concerned, we don't really need to spend much time discussing Matt Mullenweg, because all the things we need, we have ourselves. We have the people, the places, the organization, the politics, the software. We just have to decide to take over control of it. And whatever else happens, it doesn't have to be a battle. It can just be, we just go, you know, la, 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 and don't listen to any of this nonsense. Same thing with the governments. We'll see what he says in Madrid, but does it really matter? Because even as of 2 days ago, there were some posts about why is it that the WordPress administrative dashboard with Gutenberg working so well, why do they keep changing the names of everything? Why do they keep changing the position of things? Yesterday or day before was a good conversation with many of our pals in there about why is the default setting for WordPress when you're in the editor to go full site, full screen? And it turns out because Matt Mullenweg said it should be that way. And all the rest of us were like, but the default behavior isn't obvious, and you keep moving the controls for this, and oh, nobody knows you can filter it. And it seems to be, well, if enough people complain to Matt, maybe he'll let somebody change it. But otherwise, he's decided. And I find that really odd. Like half the internet uses the software, but Matt decides. Because that sounds a lot like Elon Musk and Twitter. And that's not really what he's saying in public. He's not saying that it's his thing. He's saying it's our thing, but in reality, it's his thing. And that's kind of weird. You know?
So, Chris, I take what Spencer says, but I think Spencer. I understand where Spencer's coming from, but I think Matt has all the IP control, the intellectual property to some degree. Or, yeah, it's open source, and that murks the water a bit, but fundamentally, him and his team at Automatic, they run it all, really, don't they, Chris? It's all. I'm surprised the water cooler people, I think they knew this. I think it suited their purpose, Tucker and her and all the rest of them, to go along with it. And now it doesn't suit them. So they make out it's a big surprise. Everybody knew that he run and Automatic run it all. So I find it all a bit bizarre, Chris, really, to be truthful about it.
Well, it's a complex 20-year-old project. And I think one argument would be, if you want things to change, you know, contribute, like get involved. And even this show we're making right here is a contribution to the WordPress media space. It's not just about submitting code and stuff like that. What I'd love to see is, even if it were just a test or potentially run in parallel, is to use technology that exists today, like the DAO, the decentralized autonomous organization, where every WordPress user has an equal vote. And sure, someone might figure out how to game the system, but at least there could be a better way for people to govern or express ideas on what they want. And even if we keep the same power structures in place, at least let's clarify what the masses really do want. And if we could figure out a way to make those votes equal based on being a user, I think that would be pretty cool. Even if it doesn't like replace the existing structure, at least give a place for everybody to have an equal voice.
All right. So, Lee, I just think people in the WordPress community just bought into Matt's nonsense, basically. Now, the reality is, I don't know if you're aware, Lee, that Automatic took almost $900 million of VC investment over 6 rounds of investment. The reality is it wasn't for that almost $900 million investment. WordPress wouldn't have 50% share of the internet. So it's a kind of open source, but it isn't really, because almost no other open source project had $900 million of investment in it. So these people that buy into Matt's nonsense, well, you just have to look at where the money came from, really. That's my position. What do you think, Lee?
I met up with Matt maybe 5 or 6 years ago at a WordCamp. Actually, I think it was WooConf, actually. And it was right around the time when Gutenberg was coming to life. And I remember thinking at the time that that represented a real split in the WordPress population, because he was saying it was just like a one-on-one conversation, like after one of his talks. So this wasn't like a public announcement of anything that he was making. You were just talking. And but he was saying that he felt like that WordPress was losing ground to like Medium and like other blogging platforms, because the WordPress editor was really complicated to use, and it wasn't really user friendly for people who weren't techie people like us, or like me. I read a lot of plugins for WordPress and everything. And then I remember thinking at the time, that's really weird, because that, like, out of all the problems that I've ever had with WordPress, learning how to use the editor was not one of them. Like, there's a lot of like plugin conflicts, and like there's all kinds of stuff that's going on, and like understanding how the loop works and everything that was that causes me a lot more trouble. But then the problem was, it really created this schism in my world of WordPress, because as a plugin developer, it was really hard to know, like, if you're going to build a plugin that interacts with the admin area of WordPress, what are you supposed to do? Because is it going to be Gutenberg? Is it going to be the default classic editor? Is it going to be some kind of third-party editor, like how Divi rearranges the whole thing or whatever? It's like, how are you supposed to know how to put buttons and stuff to let people add shortcodes in and just do things if you don't really know what environment you're coding for? And so like that was like, when I was talking to him, like I was thinking, well, now that we're introducing Gutenberg into the mix, that's really going to make it even harder for developers to know how to build plugins that interact with stuff. And he's out there talking about Medium and using like a more, like an easier environment for, I guess, like maybe the democratization of publication or something like that. And I was like, wow, we're in totally separate camps now, because I'm kind of in this developer camp building WordPress plugins for other WordPress developers who create WordPress sites for their clients. And the clients never themselves ever do anything in WordPress. They just have the website and enjoy the leads and the contacts and stuff that come from it. And then he's thinking about it more as like a communication channel for non-techie people. And like at that point, I just noticed that there's this giant divide between like my world of how I interact with WordPress and my clients and everything, and like other people that are just using it like Medium or something like that. What do you guys think about that? Like, have you noticed that kind of schism or that divide as well?
Because it's his vehicle for other things. Now, 2 days ago, a week ago, he bought something that looked interesting to me, that text platform. Now, Tumblr, give me a break, but I do use that podcast thing. So what I envision what's going on is what you're talking about too, is that he's been put on a pedestal of a lot of money and a bunch of investors, that they've got a brand, and he's perceived as this boy guru. So what they're trying to do is milk it so they can put the equity capital into all kinds of other businesses and investments. And when he was talking that nonsense, it's the Gutenberg here, there, and everywhere thing. To lead a better life. The idea is, it's not about WordPress. It's about what can they develop, and then put their hooks into all kinds of other things, right? So it's really weird when you're in the WordPress project to be, what? Why isn't he focusing on getting this project finished? I think it's because he's got the pressure from all these investors of like, hey, we give you a shit ton of money. Go out and buy a bunch of stuff like every other company does that has a shit ton of money, so we can, put chips all over the roulette board and hope for our number to come up. That's it. It just seems clear to me because he's so detached from any realities of managing this as his focus. But yet, unlike Elon Musk, he has zero monetization success. Starlink, fortune. SpaceX, fortune. Tesla, fortune. Even Solar City, fortune. Elon Musk is a lunatic, but everything he does seems to make money. Mullenweg hasn't made dime one other than by leeching off the hosting business of his own people that painted his fence and kicking him off their homepage. And I think that's kind of a sad testament 18 years later that he's going off saying these oddball things and buying oddball companies instead of like, how about spending some of that money on paying people to actually run the goddamn project like a real company?
Never.
Like, seriously. I
No,
mean,
we don't want-
doesn't it seem odd that not a dime of the capital has been spent on hiring a real board of directors, a real C-suite of people, real people with marketing experience? Why is it all a bunch of amateur hour people being asked to contribute their time and then crack the whip on people and companies because Matt says you didn't contribute enough time? Meanwhile, he does differently for himself. It's just odd. And it's not really... to me,
it's not, I don't think it's odd at all if you can find people that's prepared to work for you for nothing.
It's transparent, is what I'm saying.
You're not going to give up on that business model, are you? That's a very good. If you can find a load of people to work for you for nothing, you're just going to.
Sorry, do you guys listen to Guy Raz, How I Built This? Listen to that show. It's incredibly well produced. But one of the things you hear again and again and again and again is that any company with this long of an existence and this much money behind it has long ago taken the CEO off the chair, unless they happen to be an amazingly unique individual, and put professional people in place. Here, that's not happening.
Well, it's not going to happen because of this. Yeah. So, Kurt. So I don't know if you listened to the podcast, but they went off on this thing. It's open source. We can go off on our own. Blah blah blah. It's all fantasy, isn't it? Kurt? It's never going to happen, and it's a. I just think it's a bit sad that when people they're not accepting the reality that him up running things is he owns everything. He owns all the IP, all the branding, he owns WordPress.org, he owns Automatic. He is it, basically. What do you reckon, Kurt?
Well, to steal a page out of Mr. Badgett's book, I'm going to go with this whole thing is a very complicated issue. I did listen to the podcast. And as I listened to them, and I tried to focus on like fact that they were trying, because they were talking a lot about emotions, but I was trying to pulse out some facts that they were talking about. And I was listening to that. And then I quite honestly listened to the board here. And one of the things that I'm constantly driven back to, and maybe it's because I was in WordPress since 2004, but I wasn't in WordPress until just a few years ago. And so I go back to this giant silent majority of people that use WordPress that don't have a care in the world and aren't affected by any of these conversations. And then I see this small microcosm of people that get super excited and super fired up about it. And you know what? If we don't like who's running it, if we don't like what's happening, and there's enough of us that want to get together and make a change, we could make a change, Jonathan. I mean, I know that you say, no, we can't. It's too far along. It's too big. It's too this. It's too big to fail.
Oh, no. It's just that he owns everything.
Sure. But it's open source, and you could scrape off some of that and you could improve it, and you could do stuff on your own and launch your own thing and have your own committee, and you could run it with as many different people groups as you wanted to. And you could do all kinds of cool things. But it's the idea of we could get online and complain about it, or we could put our feet down and take action for it. And that's where the taking action part takes capital, takes money, and takes those things that people are uncomfortable talking about. But someone has to be in charge. Someone has to run it. Someone has to organize it. A couple shows ago, I remember Spencer was kind of like launching a campaign. He wanted to run. Yeah, he says he's in.
What I've ended up doing is what I said I would do, because number one, all of us can only do within our own social circles. I happen to have lots of friends, and that's why I'm very fascinated when I haven't met somebody as charming as Lee, because the WordPress community is shockingly small when you think of how big of its reach. When we're at that event and there's 2,000 something people in a hotel of 10,000 other people, okay, I think I legitimately met almost every single person or bumped into somebody that I could think of, or at least said hello. And that's shocking, because if it's running half the internet and you can literally first name basis at 57 years old, that's saying something. But the other part about it is that in terms of the world, we can only do what we can do within our arm's reach. And if each of us does that thing by influencing those who are listening to us or speaking with us or sharing ideas, the momentum of that always builds. And right here, I have no personal grudge. I don't even have a desire to do anything that remotely resembles ad hominem attacks. But it's very, very, very clear that when you stack up all the facts, that the equity value to all of us who make our livelihood in WordPress is good enough, great enough, or fair enough for us to say, we don't need to have Matt Mullenweg tell us what to do, because he lives and dies by the same thing he started with. It's open source. You can't, sorry, Matt, you set up the board game back in 2005 and 6, and you said, rule 1, Genesis of the WordPress Bible, open source is open source, and here's the GPL, blah, 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 blah. Well, I'm really sorry if now the rest of us have sort of woken up from the delusion that you're looking over our best interests first, because it's clear you're not. But I don't care what you do. I don't wish you anything other than success. But for the rest of us, what I have done is started to do that WordPress as a service. I've decided to say, we don't need 70,000 choices. We need a curated set of stuff and somebody to introduce it to the environment. Because I see the biggest problem to us who make our living as customers being confused as hell about what the hell is WordPress actually doing versus every single other SaaS company. It's so clear from the top down. It's a platform. That's what we can all do. And that's what I'm doing. And here I talk on these shows and I'm a little bit of an instigator. I'm willing to take the heat because I'm untouchable. Unlike some people who had to leave the show in the past because their jobs were threatened indirectly or directly by Matt. And I'm also happy to call out people like the Chocolate Factory, who I'm being gracious not saying his name, because his behavior is disgusting to me, because it's unfair and it's bad for all of us in WordPress when that kind of behavior, black hat tactics happen, because people use his stuff and then they end up thinking that it's a big spammy, scammy mess, just like Windows 95 was. And that's it. That's all I can do. And the rest of you do your part, and we'll see which way the wind goes. But
yeah. If you've got any complaints about what Spencer just said, please,
all my words, not Jonathan's words.
Please send emails to Spencer. His email address is on his
to address
Please do not send any emails to me, because
I want to point out something on that topic.
His views are his views.
I do want to point out a couple things. First of all, one of the things I love is we all got to hang out, bourbon and hang. Okay, first of all, Chris and Kurt are very close. They work together, but we all hang out when we can, and we met in person. I love the differences of our personalities, right? Like Chris is the most super laid back dude. He's just like this in real life. And Kurt is like closer to me, but like a nicer version of me in some ways, but we have similar interests. I am the guy who I live and die by the sword of facts and truth, and I'm not afraid to say it. And I've publicly, we're going to do the story about Andreessen. I've publicly gone up against Marc Andreessen. And I'm willing to do it when facts are on my side, because I'm willing to go into the public forums and say, look, you may not like what I'm saying, but argue the facts. And here in this WordPress thing, it's just undeniable that the facts are there. And yet, here's what's weird to me. When I say stuff in Twitter or on LinkedIn or one of those social networks, Mullenweg never addresses me publicly. Never. We're commenting on the same. He'll never say anything to me. And you know why? Because the facts are on my side. And the same with the Chocolate Factory owner. He'll never say anything in public because they know they can't address the facts. That's it. Well, and if they did address the facts, it would be very bad for what their position is.
Yeah, I need to go for the break, but just two things.
Thank you for that moment.
I think
you just rant on here.
I think you need to take the tablets. Actually.
I am not upset. I'm just saying, like, we're having a conversation in this place. It's a good opportunity.
Yeah,
I
need to go for the.
you know.
I need to go.
Go for the break.
Two comments. The reason why they don't reply to your comments is they're too busy counting the money. And secondly,
they're in the same space addressing other people, but they won't address my particular comments, and I think that's why.
No, they're just counting the money. And what you call facts, I call them Spencer facts. They're slightly different, but there we go. We're going to go for our break. We will be back in a few moments, folks. We're coming back, folks. I just want to point out we've got a fabulous partner set up at WP-Tonic. If you've got a customer website and they're looking to build a membership, learning management, or a Buddy Boss website, why don't you look at becoming a WP-Tonic partner? We've got a fab offering for you. All you have to do is to go over to WP-Tonic/partners, WP-Tonic/partners, and find out all the information there. We'd love you to become a WP-Tonic development partner. So on we go. Oh yes, Marc Andreessen, the enemy. I put there in his Techno-Optimistic Manifesto, and part of it were the enemy. There was a long list of enemies in this. So Lee, what did you think of Marc's Techno-Optimistic Manifesto and the bit that lists the enemy?
I think I missed that link. I jumped straight down to the Twitter X one. So I didn't read that one.
Oh, right. I'm sorry. All right, let's move on. Let's go to Chris then. Chris, what did you think?
I'm a fan of technology, and there's a fan of rapid technology innovation. And I love this fact that it was 66 years between the Wright brothers' first flight and landing on the moon. And that's just aviation. When we do that in education, software, computer science, hardware, vehicles, it's a good time to be alive. It's an exciting time to be alive. But I think, I guess I'm more like politically, I'm an independent. I don't take a side. I'm independent. I feel the same way about these issues. It's not that capitalism party on one side and environmental policy or social whatever on the other side. I just think the big challenge is, how do we do all that together? How do we do rapid technological innovation that also makes society better, that's also good for the environment, and so on? So it's more, for me, it's just an issue of transcend and include. When somebody gets deep dogmatic on like an issue, they're often missing the opportunity to include the good parts of what's on the other side of that issue and move forward. So that's the way I see it. And I appreciate his voice in terms of kind of pushing back against some of the anti-capitalism, anti-technology stuff. But at the end of the day, everybody has their own choice. They can think what they can think. They can do what they want to do. They can make their own consumer choices with their dollars. But there's often opportunity of taking the best of what looks like a polarized debate or dichotomy that's actually both have good points.
Right, Kurt, this is Marc comes across, unlike Spencer, I've never met him, but Marc comes across as a very charming, very intelligent individual. But my take on this, Kurt, is that this is all garbage, really, in some ways. This is just about some geezer that it's all about the money, basically, and this guy just wants to make a load more money. So he, whatever particular position can enable him, he's on. And why? I think it's like anybody that's got an addiction. You never can satisfy it, really. And I think Marc's addiction is making money. And him and his wife own most of Southern California. And all this is just positioning because he feels that, especially AI, that he might be, not allowed to make the amount of money that he wants. Or am I being totally cynical, Kurt?
It's human nature for people to want to make more, to be represented at a higher level. It's completely normal human behavior. As I read the article, there's a lot of things that pop off, like when something's called, trust and safety or tech ethics, or we just went through 3 years of people that were selecting misinformation topics for us, and we can see, hindsight being 2020, that a lot of that guidance was incorrect. And when someone names something the trust and safety department of whatever, I don't think it's very much centered on trust or safety. So I can kind of see his points. I wonder why he had to make a whole manifesto about it. But we're not going to stop technology from rolling forward. And like Chris Badgett, yeah, I am, an advocate for technology, but the way that the flawed creature, the human being, utilizes technology is many times incorrect. Social media was a great invention, and look what we've done to it. We've adulterated it with dopamine and likes and follows, and, all of a sudden Instagram models and OnlyFans is the most popular thing on the internet. And that's not necessarily what those tools were built for. And AI isn't really built to replace all of our jobs and make us all obsolete. It's meant to enhance, some of the skills that we come to the table with. I consider myself a writer, but I still use a lot of my founding tools now in AI to get my ideas started and start kicking that can down the road. Does that make me less of a writer? I don't believe it does. I think it makes me a writer that, uses the implementation of tools to get further down the road more quickly. And, but could I misuse it? Absolutely. So it's one of those things where I think we all need to be cognizant of what technology is, what it can do, what its potential dangers are. And then unfortunately, we have to hold ourselves accountable and act accordingly.
So, Spencer, based on my experience, those that talk the most about free enterprise, based on my experience, are those that are most monolithic, want a monopoly the most. That's based on my experience. This guy. I just want to know, how much money does he need, Spencer? Or is it?
I don't think it's like that anymore. I didn't really know him at University of Illinois. He was a couple years younger than me at University of Illinois, but he famously made his money for inventing Netscape back in the days when we were using Mosaic and things like Archie and, weird stuff that seems very quaint now. And then he moved to Silicon Valley and got funding from some big investors back in the day, Jim somebody and so forth, and whatever, dinosaur age. Now, where he's at with Andreessen Horowitz is he's done famously a lot of companies. I had a personal encounter with him indirectly through my social networking with a company, Ning, where he was one of the founders, and his girlfriend, Gina Bianchini, was running it. And it was before Facebook and it was before YouTube, but we were doing social networking. That's how I got my foothold after all that stuff imploded with WordPress, because it taught me personally firsthand. I ended up in my mind on top how things really work. And how things really work was he had $100 million invested from his investors in LoudCloud. It didn't work. They renamed it Ning as a social network for anything. And the investors got annoyed that myself and one other guy figured out a way with permission to make money when they were doing freemium. And it wasn't him directly. I don't think he even was paying attention by then. But the point was, they sicked the lawyers out. They tried to crush the whole thing. And in doing so, they just exposed how things are actually working. There is a very closed circle of people, almost like Eyes Wide Shut, that Stanley Kubrick movie, who have those parties with the weird hats on. There's a very small circle of people.
Do you think one of those would suit me?
I'm not surprised if he would be attending that, because there's a very small circle of people, and this is human psychology. Tribalism works in a capitalistic way too. The higher you get on the chain, the smaller the circle of people that you are interacting with, because the higher you go, we're now in not millions or hundreds of millions or billions, we're in tens of billions, hundreds of millions. And he is in one of those elite circles of people who feels that he can dictate to the rest of us how the planet, how the universe should work. And what's so frightening about this is it's the same thing that, like we talked about a moment ago, Elon Musk, his magnification of good and bad personality traits. This is exactly the same thing. This is Marc Andreessen having an existential moment where his fear of not being able to control the rest of the planet's population is causing him to absolutely lose his shit. And when he talks about this, what freaks me out the most is that this is traditionally how wars have gone on. This is how people have been exterminated. This is how political bad stuff happens, because the decisions don't happen in plain view. They happen because of capital, right? The Federal Reserve Bank is a private bank. We went off the gold standard for it. And I can go through history of all the examples through Europe and even ancient Greece and Rome and so forth. So what I see is that a guy who is just, his entire universe is around controlling things with capital, is losing his shit that there's a democratization going on. And that is this fear of what AI will do, where any Tom, Dick, or Harry can essentially start to do things. And he's worried about it falling into hands of people who can, let's say, counterbalance his own control of capital. And for the rest of us, first of all, I wish I was sometimes more like Chris, and I'm not picking him. I mean, Chris is so chill on the way he says stuff, but I get
you need to get a dog.
I'm not upset, but I get very passionate because my living early days was as a litigator and as a person who argues philosophy.
I would never have guessed.
And I'm saying when I dealt with him in public and Gina Bianchini in public, it was the same thing. Is like that the thing that people like him hate is the light of public view, the light of public evaluation. They hate the light of facts shining on them. For him to do a manifesto seems indicative of something that must really freak him the fuck out, because otherwise he doesn't need or want that kind of public scrutiny shined on him.
I understand where you're coming from, because I think he likes to see himself as this techno-intellectual, where what he really is he's just a very successful businessman who wants to make sure he can make more money, and he doesn't want to pay any tax. Like none of them want to pay any tax.
It's like a king in the 12th century or something. The rules are for thee, not for me. All right. And what he really fears the most is exactly the situation that, like Marie Antoinette, like, if the masses start to understand more or have more capability or more power, or they can band together or whatever. So what's weird is when you read his manifesto, what's really scary about it, he's not advocating like genocide per se, but he's absolutely advocating for elitism and separatism and boxing technology away from normal people and so on and so forth. And for me, that's such an ivory tower kind of perspective, because we used to have at least a perception in America between like the bottom and the top tier, and there was a graduated scales of things you could be and do. Now it's ivory tower in the sky and everybody at the bottom hoping to clamber up on some magical ladder, and there's very little in the middle right now. And so this is,
Rightio, on to a better story. Kinster launches a free static site hosting for 100 websites. So, Lee, hopefully you read this one.
I did.
What did you think of what Kinster is up to?
I think that's pretty cool. I've been seeing a lot of people using Netlify recently, which is a similar kind of a platform where you can have like static sites hosted extremely affordably. But then I started thinking, because I also read the next article about charging for different services on X and everything. And I was wondering, I wonder, where are we going with this? Like, where are we going with offering like lots of free stuff for people? Like, are we trying to get more people to not actually use that and to upgrade to something that's like a traditionally hosted WordPress site that's paid? Like whenever I see something kind of like this, my first thought is, where are we going? Like, do we want more people to build static sites? Or are we trying to, like, what's the future look like because of this announcement?
Yeah. So, Chris, what did you reckon of this? What's your views on this? Oh, you're muted, Chris, actually.
Sorry about that. I think free hosting is a great idea and innovation. I mean, information wants to be free, and technology trends towards free over time. Not always. Like, there's no such thing as a free airplane ticket. But if you look at like WordPress is free. You used to have to pay for a content management system.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but this
Yeah.
is where we disagree, Chris. I think that whole spiel, that word, well, in a way it's free, but
the hosting was one of the last pieces to actually have a free website. If you could get a free domain name, free web hosting, WordPress, free plugins, I think we're heading that way. And it's good to see WordPress.com has a free plan. I think it's really good to see a proper web host where you can map your domain name for free. And then I think the next step is to have some kind of free level of a domain name. And companies just have to keep innovating and figure out how to monetize. But I'm a big fan of the freemium model, and I'd love to see more hosts doing that. Not just static sites, so that people could more easily get started. And as soon as their projects actually starts to get traction, whether that's traffic, orders, enrollments, form submissions, whatever it is, then they have to start paying. But letting entrepreneurs
I see where you're coming, but
for free is a good thing.
Yeah, I see where you're coming from, Chris, but my problem with that is it's very hard to persuade somebody if they got the notion that everything they start off with is for free, then to suddenly start charging them. That doesn't work, in my experience, that well, Chris. So, but you might be right and I might be wrong. It's just a way of looking at things, Chris. But based on my experience, is the major problem with your particular stance there, Chris. But it's a grey area. I'm not saying you're wrong.
I've spent 10 years doing a freemium business model, and I
know
like
you
it.
have.
And MailChimp is a great example, like free up to like whatever it is now, 200 users or contacts. That's how MailChimp got so big. And it
did, but I also think it's not a great example of the model either, Chris. But I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah,
I'm not saying I'm probably totally wrong, Chris.
I think Chris is a great example. Chris and the whole team, Kurt and everybody will, because one of the things I have to explain to people when these confusions hit immediately of what is WordPress is that there's really two models in place, but all of them are based on the same fact, which was the software is free. It's always been free. It's still free, even if you're buying premiums, because there's three things: the software, the convenience of automatic updates, and the support. And what I love about Lifter LMS and Chris and the team and everybody else's thing is that they have sold what I believe is the new business model all along. And it's what I've been doing all along, but just not saying it that. It's that people are buying a relationship with the team at Lifter, and from there, they're paying for the premium relationship and the conveniences and the things that go along with it. And see, when you see what's going wrong right now with the premium software, everybody's losing their minds because they're trying to sell what they should have never been selling all along, was access to the software. Guys like me have been giving away the code to everybody for free because all of the people I work with understand fundamentally the software was supposed to be free anyway, and you're helping them with problems I don't have to help them with. But that's where all of this comes together, is like, what really is WordPress? Chris's idea is music to my ears. You should be able to sign up for WordPress and get all the fucking software in a logical way as a platform. And from there, decide who's going to help you with it. But as it is now, it's a flea market of 70,000 vendors doing white hat and some people black hat tactics of over here, and pretending like they're selling software, but they're not. And they never should have been, because that's in genesis.
Well, that's your opinion. That's your opinion.
Of course, it's my opinion. That's why I'm on the show.
Yeah, I'm just saying I don't agree with it. I know, it's as simple as that. Kurt, what do you reckon?
There's a saying that says, "A rising tide raises all ships," and I can't help but wonder if that's like the mentality of, if we give enough people, that free biscuit to get started, and we get as many more people as possible started, right? Sooner or later, they're going to realize, oh, I want this e-commerce thing. I want this membership thing. I want this learning thing. I want this. And then it's off to the races to go buy stuff, right? And then where are they going to go? Well, they got the free biscuit from Kinsta, so it's an upsell opportunity for them down road. It's probably a very smart way to do business. I think about Harley Davidson and their motorcycle training classes. You know, how many people start on a Buell Blast or that, you know, the tiniest Harley Davidson possible, and when it's time to buy their first motorcycle, they're like, I want a Road King, and they go buy a Road King. Like that's just the model. And if it's a successful model, I think Chris has exhibited his success in that area. I think if Kinsta is going to try it, I'm kind of excited. I want to see which direction it goes.
Yeah. So Lee, I just wondered, you know, I just find that if people get stuff for free, they just don't value it. They just think it just becomes a total commodity, and they you know, I think Chris and his team offer enormous value. But my problem with Chris's stance, and I might be totally wrong, Chris, it's just my opinion, Chris, is that people just don't value it. You know, they just think, oh, we're getting all this for free, and it has no value. It's wrong. It has enormous value, but it's just people's mentality. Or am I just an old cynical prick, really, Lee? Yeah.
I don't think it's the latter. So Chris's platform, I think, is really cool because there's such a clear upgrade path between the free stuff and the paid stuff. When I saw the static site thing, 100 static sites for free thing, it's like, is it really an upgrade path from a static site to a WordPress site? And I know you can make a static site from a WordPress site, but I just don't feel like it's that connected. Like Chris has this great roadmap of, hey, give this stuff, give it a try, see what you think. If you like it, there's more stuff that you can have. Whereas like when I got into WordPress, I did not want a static site. I never want a static site. I want dynamic sites. I want to be able to do stuff. And so it just seems like you're bringing in a different audience that maybe instead of having like that static GitHub page site for yourself or whatever, you know, now you have one over on Kinsta, but like, where's the upgrade path from that to like building out like a content management platform with dynamic member content? Like, it just seems like it's such a radical shift from like a simple static site into like this dynamic, almost application that you can build for yourself.
Yeah, I think it's also where Kinsta's going, Lee. I might be wrong. I sense if you go to their website, they've reduced their marketing message about WordPress, and they're really moving up, which is, this is a strange, because it's free, but they seem to be going in marketing terms in two directions. But if you go to the Kinsta website, they've reduced the emphasis around WordPress quite considerably. So I've noticed that myself.
Can I add some differentiator? Because Lee brings up a great point, but I want to merge this with what Chris and everybody is doing. See, the thing is with the hosts, they're in a commodity business, and there's 660 plus hosts that we've been reviewing. And in of those hosting, they're all selling something that has a zero value in the future. I mean, literally like text messaging. Hosting has become a commodity item, and they recognize it. And we've spoken so many times on the show, and I'm speaking as my own business experience. That is essentially when they give away the razor blade sample, you know, the razor blade handle, razor blades. That is essentially the thing they're doing. They're saying the hosting is a way, like Kurt alluded to experience something. But the reality is what we're selling is the refills. We're selling the, you know, the inkjet cartridges. And so in WordPress, the problem of all of these conversations is that people aren't given a clear picture. What exactly am I getting? Now, static versus dynamic, totally on board with Lee. I had a customer the other day. Static was the thing that came and went as soon as everybody had unlimited speed and unlimited bandwidth. But for a few places, maybe it makes sense. Not for the majority. For everyone else, it's a dynamic platform of curated software that does features. Just like every other thing, including Go High Level and Salesforce and ClickFunnels, and you know, so that's what we're talking about. Is if people were given, Jonathan, it's free to get on it, but you can't stay free forever. You're going to have to choose a plan for support and for updates. then they can experience this is like driving the car from the showroom for a couple minutes or a day, but I ultimately have to buy it or lease it or do something.
Yeah, I see where you're coming from. It's just that I just find people, and actually, that when they're receiving a lot of stuff for free, their expectations, you think they would be, they would be gracious, they would realize, but they don't. They just want more and more and more. Because they just don't value it because you're giving it to them for free.
It depends on how you present it to them. Like if they think going into it, it's free forever, like free like beer. No, they won't get it. But if you say it's free as in, hey, take this brand new Mercedes out for a test drive and you can try it for a day a week. But what you're going to do is buy a relationship with my company and you're paying for the support in the relationship, like Lifter LMS or like WP Launch Kit. That's what people understand because they respect the fact that you're buying a premium thing, but it's not the software. And it's even not the hosting, because the hosting right now, I mean, I'm able to give premium hosting for $10 a site. That's insane. But it's a cost of the thing I'm giving in service. It's like cost of goods sold. It's just not the software. And I think that's one of the things that will really benefit WordPress is when we clear that crap out of the air, because we don't need 70,000 people making software that are platforms. We need people working.
Yeah, but the problem with that argument is it's anti-competitive. What you're promoting
on features, but not on selling the software.
Well, it sounds pretty rough for the 70 plugin producers, because what you're saying is that there should only be a chosen few.
Half of the internet runs on WordPress. Imagine if all those 70,000 people were giving an objectively fair marketplace into which to sell their specialty services, which is not being given right now. Okay. If instead of me writing these janky plugins, which are really designed surreptitiously to try to get attention, so you'll buy my software, but really I can make enough money to live. If instead I could go into that place and market my specialty expertise, by the way, using all the same software that anyone else has, it's the same skill set. It's just you're given a place where you can actually set up something that makes sense to everybody. Whereas right now, everybody's in a bazaar where they're selling one thing, but really trying to get another thing.
Yeah, that's called a free open market, Spencer.
It really isn't, because Matt Mullenweg and the rest of the politics have indicated it's not free and open because he controls the hosting page and the
I think we need to save this till next month's discussion.
Well, it's fine.
I think
that's why I only come here once a month. I save up all this energy just for you.
There you go. I look forward to it so much. So I think we're going to drop the next story because I know Chris needs to feed his dog and Kirk needs to do things. So
that's Lee, the article that Lee clicked on.
Yeah, I know, but we're up to our hour. I think I've got to respect the time of the panel. So, Lee, what's the best way for people to find out more about you and what you got to offer, Lee?
I guess the best place to go, I've got a YouTube channel that I post to weekly, which is kind of like my main online community. You can just, if you go to like lee.blue/YouTube, you'll get sent over there. So I guess like the main best place to go is just lee.blue, just my name. No W's in the front, no .coms on the end, just lee.blue. And there I am.
That's fantastic. And Kirk, what's the best way for people to find out more about you and what you're up to?
Well, I am the only Kurt Von Onen on LinkedIn, so we can connect there for sure. Because if you find me, you know you got the right one. Mañana No Más is everything about my agency, and I have the Mañana No Más podcast.
And Chris, what's the best way to find out more about you and what you're up to, Chris?
I just wanted to say a hat tip to InstaWP. It's not exactly hosting, but they're kind of doing something similar where you can actually get started with WordPress for free, and I think they're doing a great job. But you can find me over at lifterlms.com. We're having a 50% off Black Friday sale that comes with $2,000 worth of bonuses that starts on November 1st. So keep an eye out for that. Check out the LMS Cast podcast, and I'm most easy to find on Twitter at Chris Badgett.
Yeah, he is. He's very accessible. Chris is a great guy. Spencer, what's the best way to find out more about what you and what you're up to?
I'll be at Anger Management all week. You can find me there. You can go to WPLaunchify.com. You can find me at Spencer Foreman on social media.
Oh, thanks, Spencer. If you want to support the show, why don't you join the WP-Tonic Membership Machine Show Facebook group? It's a mixture of WordPress people and people trying to build a great membership website on WordPress. We will be back next month with another fantastic discussion. I've enjoyed this month's discussion. We'll see you soon, folks. Bye.